Welcome to the Punting is Winning podcast. Just two fans talking all things Hawkeyes. Here are your hosts, JD and Keith.
Welcome back, Hawkeye sports fans, to Punting is Winning, your All Iowa podcast. We are your hosts. He's JD. I'm Keith. Welcome back to another week. June, it's hot, and not a lot going on in the world of sports right now other than Major League Baseball and the NBA Finals. And I'd say the WNBA, but it doesn't really interest me with Caitlin Clark out right now. So,
yeah, I agree.
She's must-see TV, and that's the reason why I watch. And without her playing, it's kind of hard to watch.
I did watch the first half of the Washington game and part of the second half, just a little bit. And then I watched the first half of the Connecticut game, and I didn't watch any more of it after the halftime. No. It just, to me, it's not the same. It is absolutely not the same. I sit back and, people ask me, oh, are you a Fever fan? No, I'm a Caitlin Clark fan. If she was to go to Washington tomorrow, I'd be a Washington Mystics fan or whatever other team. That's just the way it is. I've never watched WNBA before her, and I probably won't watch the WNBA after her.
Yep, I would agree. It's outside of the Iowa players, I really couldn't care less.
Yeah, it was nice to watch Lucy Olson the other night. Get it? I get that, but.
That's why I said outside of the Iowa players, the former Iowa players. But that does lead us to the question of the week last week, which was, what do you think the Fever's record will be in the 4 games that Caitlin Clark is expected to be out? Had some people with 2-2. I think you said 3-1.
I did 3-1, but
obviously not going to be correct.
That's not correct.
I said 1-3, with the only win being the Chicago Sky. Not even really 100% confident on that right now.
Not right now.
They're just not the same team without her, and she is the straw that stirs the drink, or the gas that makes the engine run, whatever you want to use, whatever cliche or idiom you need. She has the it factor. And
we'll talk about it a little bit more.
It's
a little bit later.
So.
Yeah.
All right. You have a new question
of the week,
right?
Yep. And we'll talk about this more in depth a little bit, but. With the Hall of Fame, College Football Hall of Fame, lowering the requirements for their induction from a 60% winning percentage to a 59.5% winning percentage, they basically, I believe it was more done for Mike Leach.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that too. We'll talk more about that. The question is will Coach Ferentz sustain the Hall of Fame eligibility after the season ends? And will he retire at any point during the season or at the end of the season, or will he finish out his contract through 2029? Now, there's a couple of things in there you could answer, but that's it's thought process. I'm thought provoking. Actually, is what I want to say. So if y'all want to, and I'm not from the South, so y'all don't need to do this, but if you want to put your answers down there and just kind of give us a little synopsis of what you feel like is going to happen, if he's going to win his first 2 games, maybe 2 out of 3 losing to Iowa State, and then say, I'm done and I've got everything I need. I've got the Big Ten title for most wins of a Big Ten coach ever. I'm going to take that. I'm going to take my .598 winning percentage, and I'm going to move off to other endeavors. And then he's completely 100% eligible. And he should get it because, Woody Hayes is in, Amos Alonzo Stagg's in, Schembechler's in. They're all in there. And why wouldn't he if he's got more wins? So he will be in. Even though he didn't get the notoriety that the Michigans and the Ohio States and the Penn States or whatever get, he's still gonna get in.
Well, and I also, when you're putting down your answers, let's try to be what you think has happened, not what you feel you want to happen. Because I know there's a lot of people that don't like him or want him to retire, want him to leave. That's not the question. The question is, do you think he will, if he attains those accolades
requirements
or those requirements? not what you want to happen.
Yeah.
Your opinion on how the program is run and how you feel about him is a completely different story than what this question is.
Yeah. Make it fun for yourself. Think about what he wants to do. Think about what kind of person he is. You know, do you feel like after the third game, he's got everything he needs? He's done. He's out. Or if he's going to go ahead and finish out the season, and hopefully, you know, he's going to need a 7-5. Well, actually, he's going to need 6-6 to maintain that 0.595 in order to meet that requirement. So 6-6 will still keep him in at exactly 0.595. But if he should happen to go 7-5, then he's a little bit above that. So he could potentially go on to next season where the schedule might be just a little bit easier than it is this year, because this year is a gauntlet.
Yeah. And we can talk a little bit more about that too, but I know everybody talks about it being a gauntlet, but until a team plays a game, I don't know that you can really, you're going to say, oh, well, it's Texas. Or, I'm using these as examples, but it's Texas, it's Alabama, it's Ohio State. They're always going to be good. Yeah. Okay. But I'm talking like the teams like the Illinois of the world. Okay, on paper they look like, and based on what they did last year, yeah, they should be pretty good. But think back to 2015 and 2016. Michigan State went 12-2, made the college football playoff, beat Iowa in the championship game, broke our hearts. Had a lot of that team coming back the next year and went 3-9. So until they play those games, you don't know key injuries. You don't know it. Did anybody expect UCLA or Michigan State to beat Iowa last year? No, I certainly didn't, but they did. So I don't put a whole lot of stock in preseason rankings, preseason prognostications outside of the typical blue blood teams. Do I think Iowa's going to beat Oregon or Penn State or Ohio State at this point? No. But do I think Iowa could beat Michigan, Michigan State, Wisconsin, any of the others? Absolutely. So I don't ever chalk anything up to an automatic loss. I mean, 2017, who thought Iowa was going to throttle Ohio State? Certainly not me.
Yeah, that's why they play them on field, not on paper.
Yep, exactly. So,
moving on, we're going to briefly touch on Iowa men's basketball. We had some movement this week. We'll start with Joey Matteoni. He is a Drake transfer. He redshirted under McCollum last season. He is from Overland Park, Kansas. He's 6'9". He is a forward, listed as a forward. Really no stats in college because he redshirted. He didn't. I don't think he participated at all for Drake last season. So nothing on him. We did lose a guard that committed earlier last week and then decommitted him almost immediately. Florida international guard Ashton Williamson has left the program before he even began, which, I don't know what to think of that.
Mutual separation.
It might be. We don't know.
There might be somebody else in the pipeline that we don't know about that they're wanting to use the money for, and it was more of a, we would have kept him if we'd have needed to, but I think we got something better coming, maybe.
I thought they did lose out on a kid they really thought they could get to USC.
The Giffa or whatever.
Yeah.
That went to USC.
Yep.
Yeah, but I think there's a couple of other players that are still out there that have not committed anywhere that maybe they feel good about or that they want to save that money for, and it was more of a, hey, we have plenty of guards. We need some big guys, and I don't know that we're going to get to see a whole lot of playing time, so maybe it is more beneficial if you look elsewhere. And then it's like, yep, I agree. So,
well, speaking of guards, we did pick up a guard this week.
Yep.
Peyton McCollum. He is the oldest son of Coach Ben McCollum. He played last season at Waukee Northwest, a high school team here in Iowa. He is a 6'2" guard. He shot 51% from the field last season, 40.5% from three-point line, and 85% from the free throw line. He averaged 13.1 points, 5 assists, and just under 4 rebounds a game.
Wasn't he second team All-State?
He was All-State, but I wasn't sure what first team or second team.
Yeah.
But
it's a quality pickup. It's more of a depth piece, and I think a lot of people are already jumping on the Little Lick bandwagon with it.
Yeah.
This kid's a lot better than that. He's not, he's not high D1 caliber, but you got to have players in practice that know what they're doing, and I'm sure he's going to know the system. And some kids develop later than others. By the time he's maybe a junior, he might be able to jump in and contribute to the team in a productive, positive manner. He's got talent. He shoots the ball well. I just think that there are certain things that he probably needs to work on that he wouldn't necessarily get to work on at a lower level. And maybe he stays here for a couple of years and does say, hey, I want to play more and I want to go to a D2 school or a mid-major or something.
Yeah.
Again, you've got to have depth pieces, and you've got to have guys that you can practice against too. Yeah,
we talked about last week. They had, I think, 11 scholarship players. So this will be just like you said, a roster fill-in spot for now, and we'll see how he develops. Always take a coach's son. You always want to watch because they have the ability sometimes to really. They're a really heady player, smart. Dad sits with them with sits with them at the supper table and talks strategy and what you do in this situation, what you do in that situation that you don't get a chance to do with some of the other kids, on a one-on-one basis. A lot of times, look at Connor McCaffrey. He was very heady, very smart, not the most gifted, but, he was a floor leader and he knew what he was doing out there and he made very few mistakes. He was a very high assist to low turnover ratio person and player. And, he worked out. Now, he's not going to be all Big Ten, and I doubt that Peyton will ever be that either, but we'll see. Development can take a couple different turns. You can peak at high school and go down from there, or you can peak maybe at your senior year in college. And it's hard to say with guys these days.
Yeah, and you mentioned that sitting down at the table with Dad and going over strategies and all that. That kind of brings me back to when we were kids playing baseball. Dad coaching us again. It's at a lower level, but still kind of the same concept. When he worked nights, I'd have to leave the scorebook out on the table from the game that he missed, and he would wake you up and talk it and go through the scorebook with you. And what happened here? What happened here? What would you have done? What should we have done here? And constantly we were getting quizzed on. Here's the situation, runners on first and third, there's one out. What do you do? You've got this guy up, and he's got to, do you bunt? Do you let him swing away? It's, constantly doing that kind of stuff. And it does make you a better student of the game. And it makes you understand the game from a different perspective than as a player. It makes you understand it as a player and a coach. So, when those situations arise, and you're in there and you don't have to look over at a coach and say, what do I do here? You already know.
Yeah.
So, I think that's, I don't want to, I have no ambitions or no preconceived thoughts that he's going to be all Big Ten. He's going to come in and light the world on fire. But I do think he's going to contribute at some point. And it's not going to be a John Licklider situation where John Licklider should never have, I don't think John Licklider should have played basketball after high school. But sometimes obviously we don't get to make those decisions, but this is a totally different situation. I think you're talking talent-wise, you're talking completely different types of players, and this kid actually has some talent. And some people are already crying nepotism. I hate that word. Just because a coach has a kid that has some talent, is not allowed to have him play for him. I think that's stupid to call it nepotism if he's playing for you. Now, if he's out there playing, taking starting minutes away from a 5-star or 4-star recruit that's clearly better than him, okay, then I can see that. But just to have him on the roster, no.
Was it nepotism when Darren DeVries had his son on the team when he was a pretty good player? No.
Yeah, who's probably one of the best players on their team. Yeah.
Nobody said a word about it.
Yeah. It's a mindset that you have that you want to have.
Yeah.
In most cases, nepotism is described by people who don't like the coach anyway.
Right.
So,
well, as June, July, and early August move through, we struggle sometimes to find things to talk about when it comes to Hawkeye sports related items. So what we decided to do today was we were just going to go over Iowa's football schedule for this coming season and just talk really about them. We will down the line, as those teams come up during the season, we will go through a little more in depth each game as Iowa plays. Of course, the week before, we'll talk about Iowa's next opponent, like we always do. So this is kind of a basic preview that we're not going to get real in depth with. But there might be some information on here that you didn't know, and we hope that you take something from this. So what we're going to do is we're going to start out with basically game after game. We're going to go in order of how they show up on the schedule. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
Nope.
Okay. On August 30th, from the Colonial Athletic Conference, Iowa will take on, at home, the University of Albany Great Danes. That is a 5 p.m. Central start, and Albany was a 4-8 team last season. Thoughts?
Typically a fairly decent 1AA team, I call them.
Yeah.
They've been in the championship or in the FCS playoffs recently.
I don't think this is going to be much of a test for Iowa.
No.
I think Iowa's going to roll on this. I think they're going to, they might struggle early. First game jitters, first game mistakes. But I think Iowa will roll in this game, and we'll talk about scores later. We won't talk about them today.
I think this is a great game to get Mark Gronowski in to start his career, because it's against the competition that he's been facing anyway, but with better players around him. So it's a good chance for him to kind of get a gauge of, okay, this is how much different it is, because it's comparing the levels that he's played at. Now, granted, he played at the highest level of FCS, winning 2 national championships and falling short on the third one just by a game or so. So I think it's a good opening season opponent for him to get his feet wet.
Yeah, shake the rust off a little bit from the season before. Get acclimated to your new receiving core and your running back core. Get, June 2nd, he was supposed to start his, he was supposed to be medically cleared as of yesterday. So I have not heard anything about it yet, and I don't expect to hear anything. So we'll just continue on. On September the 6th, Iowa will travel to Big 12 foe Iowa State. That is an 11 a.m. Central start. And Iowa State is coming off an 11-3 season last year. This one will be tough. Iowa State is preseason ranked 14th. I know that doesn't mean much to you or most people, but when they rank the teams prior to the season, they are ranked 14th. Thoughts?
Thoughts are that they shouldn't be ranking anybody until about the 4th week. So, but that's irrelevant to this. I don't know. I think Iowa State lost a lot more than people think they lost. They'll be good. I look at the 11-3 record. They got throttled in in a game that against Arizona State in a championship game, but literally in the Big 12, that was their highest quality competition in the Big 12 last year. So you got absolutely obliterated by anybody that had a pulse in the Big 12. So I don't know. I'd have to see it. I could be completely wrong. They do have the advantage of playing at home, but I will never think that Iowa State is ever superior to Iowa.
I see this as kind of a normal, every year, Iowa State-Iowa game. It's going to be close. It's going to come down to turnovers and penalties, mistakes. And hopefully Iowa makes less mistakes and less turnovers and ends up winning. But I think it's going to be close.
Think about this. Go back to probably 1985. How many times since then has Iowa State beaten Iowa by more than 10 points?
Maybe 4 once.
It's the only time I can think of is when they beat them 20-3. The year that Iowa was ranked like 11th and Iowa State was not ranked. And Iowa went over there. I think it was Drew Tate went over and was injured for that game, or maybe it was Rick Stanzi or something. I don't remember. One time that I can think of off the top of my head. I could be completely wrong, but I can only think of one time where they beat them by 10 points or more.
Yeah. Let's hope that it goes Iowa's way, but being on the road to a ranked team, we'll see. Moving on September the 13th, 2025, Iowa will take on FBS independent UMass Minutemen, University of Massachusetts.
Terrible team.
That is a 6:30 p.m. start, and they were 2-10 last season. So this should be an Iowa runaway in every way, shape, and form. So not much to talk about there. You want to talk about this one? I didn't think so either.
No.
Then Iowa starts on September 19th. Iowa starts Big Ten play, and they travel to Rutgers. It is on a Friday night. It is a 7 o'clock Central start, and Rutgers is coming off a 7-6 season last season in 2024. That's a good one to start your Big Ten season. You wouldn't want to start that one at Ohio State. So you'd want to start with Rutgers, somebody that's probably not predicted to be in the top, probably 10 of the conference at this point. I think they're better than they were last year. I still think they've got room to grow, and I don't know, depending on how Iowa plays and how many injuries they have in their first 3 games, I think that Iowa has a very good chance to take this game. And they've always played pretty well against Rutgers anyway.
And Rutgers still has Gaithan Kaliakmanis as their quarterback. So
well, that's always good for Iowa, right?
Yeah.
Things ramp up quite a bit on September 27th. Iowa will take on Indiana at Iowa City, and these are TBA on the time because that's not been announced yet. Indiana's coming off a playoff appearance last season and an 11-2 record in 24.
Again, not sold on them either.
We'll see.
Flash in the pan.
Well, we kind of hope so because, we hope they kind of come splashing back down to earth this season.
Well, last time Indiana came to Iowa City as a ranked opponent that was expected to do great things, Iowa absolutely obliterated them. So.
Yeah, it was like 35-13, something like that.
No, it was 31-6.
31-6, okay. Yeah, I know it was in the 30s to something that they didn't do much.
34-6, something like that. It was bad. They only scored 6 points.
On October the 4th, there is an off week. Probably a much needed one after the first 5 games. Then on October the 11th, Iowa travels to Wisconsin. Time to be announced. Wisconsin is coming off a 5-7 season, 2024. I'm not sold on Wisconsin. I think Iowa can go up there and win this one.
I honestly, as long as Luke Fickell's coaching Wisconsin still, I think Iowa has a great chance.
Yeah.
If Luke Fickell was a smart coach, which obviously he's not, Wisconsin would be a dominant force in that conference. But he's not playing to the strengths of what he has. He's trying to build Cincinnati light in Wisconsin, and that's not going to work.
Well,
he doesn't do it this year. I think he's gone.
Well, that's a possibility because I was thinking he could be on the hot seat as well.
Yeah.
On October 18th, in comes Penn State. Now, Penn State right now, according to the pundits, is number 1 ranked going into the season because of everything they've got back because of the season that they had last season. That is a to be announced also game. They were a semifinal playoff contender. They did lose in that semifinal to
Notre Dame.
Ohio State.
No, I think they lost to Notre Dame.
Okay, lost to Notre Dame. So they finished 13-3 last season. Going to be a tall task. Drew Aller's a pretty solid quarterback. A lot of people have ranked him number 1 as far as quarterbacks in the Big Ten. Like I said, you said before, I'll see it when I believe it, but they're all going to play the game on the field, not on the paper. And, anytime you go on the road, and I'm not sure if this is Penn State would have had to have gone on the road, I would have thought prior to this point. It's anything can happen. Iowa usually plays Penn State fairly close. There's been a couple blowouts, but more recently than in the past.
I look at it in the sense that Drew Aller is kind of more of he's got a little bit more mobility, and that could be, when you have a mobile quarterback or somebody who has some mobility, there's always a bigger risk of injury. Running it, plant wrong, you blow out your knee, or you get hit wrong, and so 8 games into the season, is he going to be there? More than likely, yeah. But what happens to Penn State if he's not there? Does that change them drastically, or does it change them from a potential number 1 college football playoff contender to a 12-0 team to a 10-2? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
When Bo Prevula left, that was their number 2 quarterback then last year, and so they're either going to have to go through and see if they've got somebody in the transfer portal that can fill that number 2 role, or somebody that was on the team prior that can step up and take that number 2.
Didn't they get a high recruit freshman coming this year? I
haven't followed them that closely.
So, I mean, it's not like they have. It's not like they have. They go from Tom Brady to their average high school quarterback,
right?
You're going from a college number 1 to probably a 1AA number 1 type quarterback situation. So, I mean, I'm just throwing that out there. We just 8-9 games into the season, we don't know what injury is going to look like for either team. So, it's hard to determine whether that will still be a well-favored Penn State team, or if that'll be a more and how do we know Penn State maybe loses a couple games in there and it becomes more of a maybe they're not as good as we thought. I just never know.
I have a feeling they're going to be pretty stout, regardless. On October 25th, Minnesota comes to town. That is also a TBA on the time. Minnesota was 8-5 last season. Iowa's pretty much owned them, other than the fair catch game, which we will never speak of again. I look for Iowa to win this one as well.
Yeah,
Minnesota's coming up with. They have a new quarterback that is a transfer, I believe, in,
and again, 9 games in, he's going to have some comfortability with his receivers at that point. So you never know; he might be pretty decent, or he could just flop and they have nobody.
Right.
So I say it's always difficult to predict all this stuff this early because just haven't seen anybody yet.
November 1st. Iowa's second and last off week. They got a big one coming up on 11/8. Home game with Oregon. Oregon was a playoff team last season and also a 13-1 record from last season. I know they're running a new quarterback out there.
I don't think it really matters.
I don't think
Oregon's
it matters either.
Always good.
Yeah, they're quick.
They have
always
the money
good.
To be good.
Yeah, they're going to have that speed that doesn't. It's not typical to the Big Ten. They're just going to be so much quicker. So we'll go with that. I think Iowa probably doesn't win that one. Next week we travel on the 15th of November to USC. Time to be announced. 7-6 last season was USC. I'm not sold on Lincoln Riley.
No, I think USC is kind of a Midland team still. I just don't. I don't know. I actually would. Honestly, I prefer playing USC this year over UCLA.
I think they're getting used to the style that the Big Ten plays still.
Yeah, I think UCLA will be a better team than USC just because they made the improvements that they needed to make.
They went out and got the billion-dollar quarterback.
Yeah, and I think that will make a difference for them.
It might.
They got speed around them. So
yeah, they always do.
Actually, like I said, it's one of those years where I'm looking at thinking I would rather play USC than UCLA.
Yeah. No. So at USC, then on the 22nd, Iowa plays at home with Michigan State. This is a revenge game from last season. Time to be announced. And Michigan State finished the season last year 5-7.
Again, I'm no idea how good Michigan State's going to be.
They're returning that quarterback that diced Iowa up pretty good, Aiden Childs. So nothing given there. And then Iowa finishes the season on the 28th of November on a Friday. It is an 11 a.m. kickoff, and they're playing Nebraska. 7-6 was their record last season, and I think they'll be a little bit better. I don't think they're going to vault right up there to the top 4 or 5 in the league. And anytime you're playing Nebraska with Iowa, it's always a 3-point game, or it's either a 3-point game or it's a blowout.
Yeah, typically it's kind of like it's mirrored the Iowa State series, really.
Yeah.
Either Iowa. If Iowa loses, it's going to be a close game. If Iowa wins, it's either a 3-point game or it's a blowout.
Yeah. Yeah, there's very few times that Iowa wins a game by like 10 to 14 points. That's absolute rarity.
Comfortably wins.
Yeah.
That's what I would call it.
So that's Iowa's season in a nutshell. I wanted to go through it really quickly, give something to talk about. But I did want to tell you some of those guys that are out there that are saying that Iowa's season is really not going to be that tough. Their schedule is going to be, not as hard as they thought. Well, here's what I've added up. I've added up Iowa's opponents this season for their last season record, and Iowa will be playing teams that are combined 93-64 record in 2024. They had as a 68.8% winning percentage, and 3 of the teams played in the playoff that are appearing on Iowa's schedule this year. All 3 do play in Iowa City. That would be Penn State, Indiana, and Oregon, all in Iowa City. 4 of Iowa's opponents are ranked in the early projections. Penn State projected number 1 going into the top end of the season. Indiana is 17th, Oregon 8th, Iowa State is 14th. So I think it's a pretty tough schedule based on the teams that they've got coming in based on their last season. But I
would throw out the preseason rankings. I think they're useless at this point, but got to start somewhere, I guess.
They are, but that's,
So it sells.
It does. It sells the magazines.
Sells the papers, yeah.
Yeah, it sells the magazines. People get excited about their team being number 1, 2, or 3, or whatever. We'd be excited if Iowa was in that ranking, like in 12th or 14th. We'd be excited and we'd be clinging to that number. But some preseason places have Iowa in the top 25, right at 25. So I think they're thinking Iowa's going to have a pretty decent season, but they could have a much better season. They could be a much better team, but that schedule, it may not reflect that. And we've talked about that before. So that's something to be cautious of when you talk about, when people are out betting on Iowa's season. It's not a schedule that's for the lighthearted.
But like you said,
very serious.
Like you said earlier, all Iowa has to do is go 6-6 for Ferentz to maintain that 59.5 and be able to retire at the end of the year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything above
that's true
for him. So
yeah, that's true.
I don't want to look at it that way because that's a defeatist attitude to start with. But I would honestly I'd probably be surprised if it was anything less than an 8-4 like we typically see, or 8-5 for the bowl win or bowl game. I would be surprised.
I would if
just
somebody said
that's typical.
If somebody told me right now you can take Iowa at an 8-5 season, I would probably take that.
Because I just think that Iowa is, when you look at what would be considered the model of consistency, you'd see Iowa's logo right there.
Yeah.
And consistency means that you're consistently an 8-win team. I don't know, when was the last time Iowa didn't win 8 games? You got to go back to 2014?
Oh, were they 7-5? 6-6,
maybe.
I don't think they've had
under 7 wins for a long time.
One year they finished 6-6 or 6-7.
It might have been 20.
And they lost to Western Michigan or something the last game of the season, and then lost the bowl game.
That was like 2007.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't think Iowa has lost or has won less than. I don't think they've won less than 7 games since at least 2014. So, I mean, that's, like I said, I'm talking consistency. That's what you expect. 7-5, 8-4. That's typical of Iowa. Sometimes you'll get a 9-3, 10-2, 11-1, but very rarely do you get a 6-6 or a 5-7. And I think as Iowa fans, we take that for granted. You know, when you look back, 2012 was the last time we had a losing record. And that was 4-8.
That tells me
that was a bad year.
That there's a possibility that they're due for a bad season.
Or they're due for a really good one. You just never know. I didn't expect in 2015 that they'd be 12-0 at the end of the year, when the year started.
Right. I mean,
so it's just
that'd be crazy to say that.
You just got to let it play out because you just don't know what injuries are going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, Iowa could get injured right off the bat and be a 3-9 team just because of injuries. You know, you just don't know. That's why until I see other teams and I see what they've got for depth, what they've got for backups in certain positions, it's hard to make a prediction because, you know, even Oregon's got a great team, and you lose a prolific starter, a quarterback that's a high-performing player, they're going to take a step back. I don't care how good the rest of the players are because that's a key position. It happens to everybody. Now, some places, you know, Alabama, they can replace their 5-star with another 5-star, and it's like interchangeable parts sometimes.
Yeah,
and I'm not saying Oregon could do that, but typically that is not the standard. So,
yeah,
that's just my opinion.
Well, we are going to move on, and we talked earlier in the program about the Hall of Fame and that they dropped the requirement from 60% winning percentage to 59 for coaches.
59.5.
Yeah, 59.5. Sorry, 59.5, because that is important. Because right now, Kirk Ferentz could walk right into the Hall of Fame if he retired. He's above that threshold. So he could retire today, not coach one more game. I know he's not going to do that because he's after that Big Ten coaching most wins in a Big Ten team with a Big Ten team.
Never be touched.
And well, not the current landscape of college football with the way things change and instant gratification and
in our lifetime.
But
I don't think it'll
unless something changes, it won't happen.
Or unless Ryan Day was to start winning every single game and never go anywhere, but that's not going to happen.
So Kirk's got 2 things out there that he's looking for: is that he wants to stay above that threshold for the Hall of Fame, and he also wants to get the Big Ten coaching record for most wins in a Big Ten school for a coach. Right now he's at .598 if he never coached another game. But at Iowa, if you take out the Maine, the 3 years that he was at Maine and he finished 12-21, he's there at 62.2%. He's at 62.2% winning percentage. But because he actually did coach at Maine, he has to, those are counted. Those games are counted. So officially he's at .598. Right now he's at 204 wins in the Big Ten. He needs 206 to take the lead over Woody Hayes. He needs a 7-5. Well, 7-5 to stay at above. He'll be at the same as he is now if he goes 7-5. But if he goes 6-6, he just stays right at the minimum requirement to be in. So he needs to stay out of 5-7. If he goes 5-7, he's going to want to coach another year to try to get it back above. Mm-hmm. We talked about this on the question of the week, but what happens if Kirk decides after game 3, I've got the record for the Big Ten, and I'm over the threshold. I think I'm just going to call it a career, and then I can say that I'm this and I'm in the Hall of Fame. I could make the Hall of Fame. I'm sure he would be in. What happens then from an Iowa standpoint? We talked about this before we come on, and I guess at that point you turn to Seth Wallace and say you're going to coach the rest of the season.
Yeah, and him or LeVar Woods would be the interim coaches for the rest of the year.
Correct.
Or Tim,
That's
or
what
Tim
I would
Lester.
Could be, but I would think it'd probably be more like, because assistant coach Seth Wallace, assistant head coach.
Yeah, but I think we also have to look at the fact that Tim Lester has head coaching experience, so that might be a driving factor. It's because it's going to be Beth's decision at that point. I don't think it's going to be Kirk steps down and he says I want this person. If he steps down, she can say, well, I think yeah, great, you want that person, but I'm going to go with this one.
So she's going to throw an interim tag on somebody and throw him in there instead of letting Kirk basically tell her how he wants. If he says that Seth Wallace has the experience because he took over the game I was suspended for, and he did a great job. Of course, it was against the team that they should have throttled anyway. Let's talk long-term, though. Let's say it's Seth Wallace, or it could be Tim Lester, it could be anybody. My question then to you would be, or throughout this hypothetical, does Iowa then, if Seth Wallace has finished out the season and wins games he's supposed to win, and I'm not saying he's going to set the world on fire and beat Penn State and USC and all those, or Indiana, do they offer him a longer term contract? Do they say, okay, you're going to be potentially our head coach, we'll sign you to a 3-year contract right now, and you can get your 3 years and determine whether or not? Personally, I'd like to see, if he finishes out the season, we move on and find a different regime. Start over. And I know that people saying, oh, what about Nebraska? They did that, blah, 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 and they haven't been relevant in 30 years. You can't, high risk, high reward. If you always stay with the status quo, you're never going to get anything more than what you're always going to get.
I think it's going to depend on who's available at the end of the year as well.
I don't know.
I think you can get.
I'd like to have some young up-and-coming coach that's got good lineage, that has won, maybe at a lower level. I mean, look at the coach at Indiana. That guy, nobody knew him. They said, who's this guy and why is he going to be coaching a Big Ten school? And it turns out his first year and he makes it to the playoff. Those are uncharted territory for Indiana. That's you just don't see that. Yeah. So why couldn't that lightning in a bottle hit Iowa?
Yeah, but the problem, here's the thing that I want to caution people on is, it's not just catching lightning in a bottle, but it's keeping it in the bottle. You can catch it and then it's gone. And okay, you were one year flash in the pan. You had a great year. You made the playoffs. The next 3 years you went, averaged 5 and 7. Are you really that much better off at that point? I don't think so. Yeah, you made the playoffs. Whoopee. You got beat in the first round too. No different than making a college bowl game, that New Year's Six bowl game getting beat. Nobody's going to remember you.
Well, I guess this is where
next 3 years you go 5 and 7.
This is where you and I are going to disagree on this. Yeah, I know.
Hypotheticals.
I'm
think
ready to move on.
You burn it down and start over? You can. I mean, it's just, like I said, it's going to depend on who's available or who you think you can get. Also, it's going to depend on how good Ben McCollum does in basketball, honestly, to determine whether she's smart enough. I shouldn't say it that way. Whether she made the right decisions in the basketball hire or not. Now, again, that's going to be, how do you take the 1 year example and say, well, he had to rebuild a completely entire new roster and he went, 17 and 15. Is that good enough? Well, Iowa standards, no. But, it's going to depend on, okay, was his team competitive? Was it fun? Did the fans come out? Do they think there's upside there? When it comes to football, okay, I've got this proven commodity, semi-proven commodity, let's say, in Seth Wallace. I've also got Tim Lester on the roster, on the coaching staff, who has head coaching experience that I could pull in if I need to do it for a year or two until the right candidate comes along. And then so I do a 2-year contract or 3-year, but I can cut them loose after 2. I don't know. It's going to depend. It has to depend on who's available. I don't think it matters to me one bit if the end of the year you just chuck them and go. It's got to be, who do you think you can get and who's available to fill that position? Because if there's nobody with the resume or the moxie, I guess, that you think can fill that role, there is no high risk. There is no high reward to it at that point. It's just high risk.
Well, I'll tell you right now, the one thing I will disagree with you on is the fact that you said that Seth Wallace was a semi-proven commodity. He hasn't proven anything.
Thinking more along the lines of Tim Lester, because I'm thinking actually Tim Lester would probably be the one to be offered over Seth Wallace.
Well, I would be more apt to say that with Tim Lester than I would be about Seth Wallace. Seth Wallace coached one game and he beat an FCS team.
Yeah.
Big deal.
But I'm saying
I almost could have done that.
The other thing I mentioned was a proven commodity is the fact that he's been in the system for years and you're not really changing anything. You're just.
And that's exactly the reason why I want him out.
I understand that.
It's the same thing over and over.
You are with a lot of other people on that. I'm on the fence because I'm more of a, I don't care what it looks like as long as it's a win.
Well, I agree with the wins.
Fixes everything. I don't care if it's 3-0. I know people are going to say that's boring, whatever. When all's said and done, if you look back at a year and you say this team went 13-0 or 15-0, won the national championship, but my God, their games were boring to watch. Do you care if they won a national championship, though? No, you don't. So, I mean, that's where I'm at is I don't care what the scores are as long as they're wins. Now, if you're out there getting blown out in the losses and you're barely winning games that, you know, you're going 8-4, but you're barely winning games and you're getting blown out, that's a different story. But if you're winning games and you're winning them by 3 points, hell, Penn State did that last year most of the time. In any game with a competitive team, they won by 3, by 7. They didn't win by 15, 20, 25 points.
But I kind of feel like that's where we're at right now, is that we either win by 3 or we lose by 40.
Well, I'm
not talking about in the Big Ten season. I'm not talking about the FCS players or teams that we played.
Yeah, it's very rare that we lose by more than one score. Very rare. I mean, yeah, it happens.
31-0, 42-3.
Yeah, well,
shall
okay,
I go on?
So there are a few
28-0.
Yes, I get that. But there's also
that's my concern is that we're not competitive with the better teams. You know, any team with a pulse, any team with a number in front of their name is going to come in and probably shut Iowa out, and that's the way it's been the last 4 or 5 years. Well, I'm tired of that.
It has a lot to do with the fact that we haven't had a quarterback for 5 years.
Well, we don't know if we've got a quarterback this year. That's unproven.
We'll have to
at this level.
We'll have to wait and see.
He's proven at the FCS level. We know he can play at the FCS level. Everybody knows that. He's proven it. You step up to the big boys, we don't know because he's never done it.
Yeah. I would rather have
the lottery numbers.
I would rather have a proven FCS commodity that has proven it for 4 years and has taken his grad year in the upper levels than a guy that has done it for 1 year and moving up.
I never insinuated that he couldn't do it. I'm just saying he hasn't had the opportunity to prove that he has.
None of us know yet. We all thought that Cade McNamara was going to be better than he was. Turned out to be a dud. It happens.
Yeah. Well, it didn't help that he was injured every time he turned around.
That's why I don't like to make predictions this early in the season on, this team we're going to lose to. Huh? You just don't know because you don't know about injuries. You don't know about this. You don't know about, what coaches might get in trouble between now and then. What players might get suspended because they robbed a liquor store, beat up their girlfriend, or whatever the case may be. Screwed up and got busted for drunk driving on their moped.
Yeah, that's happened more than once.
I'm just saying, let's let the things play out and let's see what happens. I get it. It's great to speculate and it's fun to talk about it. And, in the end, do we have a decision in how the team is run and how the next coach is? No, because if I'd have had my input on the basketball coach, I wouldn't have hired Ben McCollum. That was not my first choice.
No.
Am I hoping that he proves me wrong and he turns out to be great? Absolutely.
I want to change the subject real quick. I think we're going to need to move on. I did hear over the weekend from a very reliable source who has been speaking to the AD at Iowa that there is a $66 million or $60 million, I can't remember which one he said, improvement to Carver Hawkeye. Do you know about that coming up? Yes, there's going to be, and I believe it's already a done deal. It just it hasn't been officially released yet, apparently, unless somebody already knows about it, and I don't know that anybody does. But there's going to be a $60 to $66 million an improvement on Carver Hawkeye Arena.
Well, in today's standard, that's probably replacing 15,000 seat cushions.
Or putting in a different air conditioning unit.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they could change the floor and put in new seats, and that covered the $60 million.
Something he also said was that Beth is looking forward to moving the student section closer to the floor after the renovation.
I think she has the right ideas. I just hope that she has the wherewithal to get them pulled off. Yeah. That's where Barta was a good. I think Barta was a good person when it came to being able to fundraise, but when it came to actually getting things done that truly needed to be done, I think he lacked that. Yes, he got the more info. That I'll give him that, and that is a very nice project after it's completed. But simple things like moving the student to the floor can be good, because he wanted to cater to the money donors who had those seats. If you're going to sit on your hands, yeah, you can donate the money on your hands. And rows behind them.
Yeah.
I don't know. I hate catering to money donors, but I know you have to because you need the money to survive. But money shouldn't buy you the best of everything and cost the experience or the fan experience or the team atmosphere in the process.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't help.
I'm looking forward to an exciting season, and I know the fans will come out and support the new coach. Hopefully he has a good season and continues that energy that he's starting with.
He's got some good momentum.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Speaking of coaching changes.
Yeah. Iowa women's basketball coach Jan Jensen has hired an assistant coach. Her name is Jasmyn Walker. That's as of today. And she formerly coached, was an assistant at George Washington University. So we want to welcome her in, and hopefully we get good things. And the Iowa basketball team continues to ascend.
I assume that's replaced with Raina Harmon or somebody like that.
It might be. Yeah. I knew they had an opening. I just didn't know which one they were replacing with who.
Well, that's a wait and see attitude with that. See what we get out of that.
Right.
I think when it comes to the assistants, especially in like women's and men's basketball, it's a little less important. I mean, not that they're not important parts of the machine, but as long as you have 3 out of the 4 assistants are really good, you can probably survive. So I think you have to be smart.
On game day, your assistant coach is probably not going to provide you much, but during the practices and during the week, training, prep work, all that stuff, they're going to be valuable.
Game film, recruiting.
You're going to need to have somebody that's really got it going on, knows what they're doing.
Yeah, quite honestly, that's where I think, there's 2 things that Fran should have done. He should have went out, and this would have probably kept his job. He could have gotten rid of 2 of his assistants, and he goes out and he gets 1 assistant that can coach defense and 1 assistant that can recruit. That guy that can recruit doesn't need to really do much. He obviously going to have some basketball acumen to him, but he doesn't need to be as involved as an assistant. He just needs to recruit and sell the program. The other guy needs to not do as much recruiting, but sell the defense. And he would have kept his job, and we wouldn't be looking at a brand new roster. Again, maybe that's a good thing. I don't know.
Well, at this point, it's wait and see.
I mean, as bad as Iowa was on statistically and in the standings last year, the players that left sure got a good penny for leaving. So
yeah,
there must have been something there.
Right. Well,
so, anyway,
individually they're worth more than the whole, apparently.
Collectively,
yeah. Really quick, we're going to finish up with the cash cow that is Caitlin Clark.
Yes.
Obviously, she's been out for 2 games, and she's probably slated for at least 2 more. Are we really finally realizing, and maybe, of course, we knew it ahead of time, but maybe the league is starting to realize the impact that Caitlin Clark has on the Fever? They went out and blew a game to an 0-5 team at home, a team that just got beat by the New York Liberty by like 50 points or near 50 points, and they lose to them at home. That's unacceptable behavior to lose to a team that's 0-5 on the season and hasn't even played all that great. That just goes to show you how important Caitlin Clark is to that team.
But you hit the question, or you hit the nail right on the head when you said, does the league realize her importance? No, they don't. Even the talking heads of that league are still saying Paige Beckers is going to be the best player in the WNBA. Take Paige Beckers off of her team, you won't even notice that she's not there. Take Caitlin Clark off the Fever, and you definitely notice she's not there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, one thing, too, Paige Beckers is not sitting there getting double and triple teamed every time she walks up the court 94 feet.
But they don't look at that. They don't. They want to hate. They want to hate on Caitlin Clark for whatever reason, because she has an I don't give a rat's rear end attitude about things, about people and their opinions.
Right.
And she doesn't play into their drama and their BS. And she just goes out and plays basketball. And they don't like that because they want the controversy, they want the drama, they want all this stuff so that it sells, because they think that's what they need to sell the league. No, what they need to sell that league is her.
Right. Well,
and the minute they realize that, the minute that league will become valuable. Until they do, it's garbage. It's hot garbage.
Well, they've been so used to that status quo for years and years and years. And then when you throw in somebody that's going to upset the balance of the league, and it's going to immediately raise resentment. What is she? She's nothing. Why are you all excited about her? She's nothing. And so then when they find out that she's actually is something, and it brings up jealousy and resentment from the other players. And, the first thing they do is lash out to try to hurt her or get her off the court so that they can have things back the way that they've always felt comfortable with. And that's just the way it is. And, we can go into the X's and O's of why the Fever are 0-2 in her absence. Well, I can tell you the majority of it is when other teams come into the Fever, when Caitlin Clark is on the roster, their number one goal defensively is her.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to put 2 teams. They're going to double team. They're going to trap. They're going to do everything they can to minimize her contribution, because she's the straw that stirs the drink, like you said earlier. Now, Caitlin's out. Now they can play defense head straight up because they don't have to worry about her. So now all of a sudden, when Aaliyah Boston's down low and she's only got 1-on-1, instead of now she's got a double team every time she gets the ball. And it's a snowball effect when the defense doesn't have to worry about a prolific player. It just makes it easier for them to play defense because they don't have to worry about that player.
I'm going to say something, and if there's any female listeners on our show, I'm going to upset you right now. But
we apologize.
I think what I'm going to say is probably true, and you would probably agree with me. Women are the most begrudging people. They will hold a grudge the longest for whatever reason. And when you throw those types of personalities together, that's why we have the WNBA the way it is.
Yeah,
because they're holding it against each other. They don't like this person coming in and taking their records. They don't like this person coming in being better than them. Guys can kind of, you see it with some players, especially on the men's side, of that ego is too fragile when somebody comes in and upsets that balance. Well, I think a lot of the WNBA players, that's the same thing. It's not so much the ego. It's just, well, I'm just kind of petty. I don't like it because I don't like somebody being better than me.
Well, that too, and that Caitlin brought a huge fan following, and she's selling out everywhere she goes. And, you know, you're talking about like A'ja Wilson out there, who was the MVP of last season, and deservedly so. She's playing in arenas with 6,000, 7,000 people, and that's it. And everywhere Caitlin goes, it's 16, 17. Whatever the arena can hold, that's what they sell out.
Moving games to bigger arenas too.
Yeah. They don't do that for the aces.
No, it's just like you said. I think jealousy is a key word in that. And you know, no offense, sorry, ladies, but you guys tend to know how to hold a grudge.
Yeah. Well, sometimes people don't like to, state the mere obvious because it might upset someone. Yeah. I mean, if you really looked at it from an objective standpoint, you would understand and see what we see.
Yeah, and it's also a good. The other point of that is if I don't get a whole lot of hate, then I'll know that people don't listen to this to the end.
Well, you know, you're going to get a lot more visuals on TikTok and what YouTube Shorts if you put that particular spot on there. We're going to get.
Anytime you have any controversy,
we might get over 50,000 views on those.
Yeah.
So
anyway,
you have to.
Speaking of
wisely.
such. I think we'll wrap up on that.
Yeah.
And as we say every week, if you like what you hear, please give us a thumbs up, leave a comment, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. I think we did pick up another subscriber this week. We had to drop one and picked up one. We will be out on the on YouTube Shorts, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Pretty much everywhere that you can get a podcast, we're there. And if you feel so inclined, we have our merch store out there that proceeds go to the Swarm. If you're interested, there's some nice stuff. Even if it's something you want to just buy to wear around the house, it's pretty cool stuff. It's good quality, and I like the dry fit stuff. It's lightweight and moisture wicking, so it's really kind of nice. So. That's pretty much it. You have anything else?
No, I'm ready to go out and enjoy the sunshine.
Yep, me too. So with that, we'll wrap it up and leave on a Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.